Welcome to another episode of Knut's Top Sibelius Tips, where we look at little tricks and stuff that I've discovered over the years that help me when I'm using Sibelius, and which I think might be of use for you. In this episode, we're going to be looking at what I would call final touches. It's a little bit of layout and a little bit of miscellaneous things that you should, look at in your score before you consider it finished. If you haven't seen the previous episode, that one's sort of related. That one's all about layout. I'll link it on the screen so you can check it out if you haven't seen it already. If you have, or if you're just coming back from having paused this video and just watched the one on layout, then let's get on with the Final Touches episode. Tip number 1 for final touches to your score in Sibelius. Use the reset note spacing and optimize staff spacing to fix common layout problems in your score. Sibelius is usually okay with spacing stuff out automatically, but you can end up with situations where everything gets kind of smushed together. And there's actually a function built in to fix this, which is called optimize staff spacing. That one is more advertised, if you can say. It's like right in the ribbon. Whereas the reset note spacing, I don't think is. I'm going to have to double check because I just use key commands for this. I don't look at the ribbon that much. Reset staff spacing, or optimize staff spacing rather, just spaces the staves out so that all the objects and markings will fit without overlapping. Reset note spacing kind of does the same, except horizontally. So you can think of staff spacing is a vertical thing, whereas note spacing is a horizontal thing. And you can end up with situations, particularly if you're changing the key signature, when Sibelius just gets confused and just smushes everything together, or just spaces it out way too much. But these are functions that are built into the software. So let me show you how to use them. Alright, I've got my score here and I want to fix the layout using optimize staff spacing and reset note spacing. So the first one, optimize staff spacing, is found in the layout tab. It's over here, and I haven't actually set a key command for it, but that's fine. You don't use it enough that you really need it. So you might want to use it on the whole score or just part of it. So let's just imagine that I want to use it for this bit, because you see stuff's kind of smushed together here. Select it, optimize, boom. And now everything fits. Reset note spacing is found in appearance, I think. Yeah, there we go. Reset note spacing. I usually use the key command here, which is Shift Option N. So you select what you need, Shift Option N, and you see that it moved stuff a little bit here to fit it all together. And this is useful in case you have notes that just get smushed together. It's not perfect. There's situations if you have really long words. So I'm going to have to... So fortunately, this score has kind of been spaced out pretty nicely already. Let's say that... let's say that the word thesaurus was coming in here. That's a word that might not... Yes, you see it's... you know what, it's actually not too bad. But yeah, you will occasionally find that can get smushed together a bit like this. Because Sibelius doesn't know what to do. But yeah, in this case, it actually was fine. But yeah, so just be mindful that there's certain limitations to these two. So you can't just use them and not use your brain. You do have to go through the score and make sure that everything fits. But yeah, they do save a lot of time because they fix a lot of small issues automatically. I will very often just use it on the whole score, and that takes care of most problems. Tip number 2 for final touches. Use braces to indicate which instruments form part of a group and which don't. My philosophy when it comes to writing out the instrument names on the scores is that ideally, unless you're working on a big ensemble piece, you shouldn't really need to put in instrument names on the pages, because the braces should make it obvious which staff is which instrument. A brace is commonly used for groups of instruments, or for choirs as they're sometimes called. Now, if you work with a choir, as I do, a choir of voices, then that brace will be on every system. But if you have any solo instruments or solo singers, these need to be put outside of a brace to indicate that this is a solo instrument or a solo singer. This is all stuff that you can set in the engraving rules. I'll show you how to do it in the software. So Sibelius doesn't always get the braces right. It tries to group instruments that are of the same choir together, but it might not know the difference between the soloist or the ensemble, obviously. So you gotta adjust the braces if this is the case. So let's imagine that I'm starting a score for SATB choir. And by default, these will be braced together. And that's usually fine because I'm usually writing for ensemble. But let's say I wanted to add a soloist. I wanted to have an alto soloist. Could even choose the alto one, the solo alto. Stick it at the top. And Sibelius will still put that brace there. Now, technically, you don't want that brace there. You want the soloist to be outside of the brace. But let's just open this up. I'm gonna go against my own advice and not putting any information here because this is not gonna be an actual arrangement. So in order to adjust this brace, I can just grab a hold of it from the top here and drag it down, like so. And that's all you do. And now this will happen on every system. Now it will, even though there aren't any system names here, even though there aren't any instrument names here, it's still pretty obvious that that will be the alto soloist and then SATB in descending order. So you don't really need to put it an instrument name in order for it to be obvious what instrument is doing which staff. Let's see that I add a baritone soloist as well. There. And take a hold of that brace. Boom. And now, it should still be pretty obvious that you've got solo baritone, solo alto, and SATB choir underneath. If you did want to add the instrument names, then you can do so in the Appearance tab, Engraving Rules. Go down to Instruments, and here you can choose. You can choose to either use full names, short names, or none. So usually at the start of a score, you'll want to use full, always. Subsequently, it would be in any later systems in the score, and then you usually wouldn't want to use the full name because it takes up a lot of space, but you could use the short name. New sections, you don't really need to worry about this unless you're creating a sort of a series of movements or songs within a single file. So don't worry too much about that. But these are the two you want to worry about. You press OK, and it has a shortened name here. Now, for an ensemble this small, this isn't really that important. But if you have, a big orchestra or big band or something, then yeah, it can get a bit crazy, and you don't want it to be confusing for the conductor. So just use your good judgment, and at the end of the day, if you put in the names and you maybe don't need to, it's fine. It doesn't really matter. As long as it's clear for the conductor what staff is what instrument, then that's fine. Tip number 3, and final tip for the Final Touches video. Use the cue function to bring in instruments if they've had a long break. This is something that's more relevant if you write instrumental music than choral music, because the practice in choral music is that you give them the full score, or a piano reduction with all the voice parts. If you're working with, say, an orchestra and the trumpets are resting for 100 bars, which is actually quite common, then you don't want them to have to sit there and count 1 bar, 2 bars, 3 bars. And, what's going to happen is they're going to get bored and they're going to lose their place. And unless the conductor points to them and gives them a clear cue that they're supposed to come in, then they might miss their cue. But you can just give them a nice little helpful cue on the page, and it'll show them, okay, so I come in after the violins do their sweeping upwards thing right there. Let me show you how to do this. This is an orchestra score that I did a few years ago. It's very big, so I'll apologize in advance for all the small details. This line here is the second trombones. No, sorry, these are the trombones. I put them all in the same way. So these are the trombones. And they come in here, but this has been a really long time since last they played. So I want them to have a cue to know that they're coming in. So in order to do this, I'd then have to choose, right, what instrument will be most useful for them to have a cue from. And in this case, I think it'll be the violins. They're playing the melody here. So you just select a phrase here, copy it. So copy. And then you select the same bars on the trombone staff and you use paste as cue. So that'll be Shift, Command, Alt, V. And then if I zoom in here, you'll see that the notes from the violins have been pasted as small green notes here. Now if I deselect, then there's nothing here. But if I select it, you see, there's some hidden notes. If I go into the trombone part, so select it and press W, then notice that there is here violin 1 and small notes. So this is a cue to then tell the trombones, you're going to be coming in after the violins do this. In fact, it forgot to change the clef back here, so I'm just going to do that. Yeah, trombones can be treble or bass clef, but every trombonist I worked with has preferred to use bass clef. So there you go. But yeah, so then they won't have to worry about counting these 18 bars since last they played. Well, I mean, 18 bars isn't too bad, but maybe they're really slow bars, and you just want, you just want to be kind to the trombones and let them know that, just relax, guys. Once the violins play this phrase, then you come in. And of course, if you've got a good conductor, they will also point at them and bring them in. But yeah, that is really all you need to know about cues. Very useful. Okay, so those are some tips for doing the final touches to your scores. In the next episode, I am just going to arrange a song, just from start to finish, talking about, what I will do each step of the way. I thought that might be interesting for you. So subscribe if you haven't already, so you'll be notified when that comes out. And also be sure to share this with your friends if you think they'll find it useful. And I'll see you in the next episode.